my old pal, Chase Goodbread of NFL.com. Chase Goodbread in attendance Sunday night for that Mike Cooley solo gig on the back deck of Casa de Reier. What about it? What about it, Goodbread?
Remarkable. It's the finest house show I've ever been a part of. It's about 90 minutes solid, and Mike squeezed as many songs as he possibly could in the time that he sat. And he's great with the banter. When he decides to chat it up a little bit between songs, that's just as entertaining a lot of times. But for your special birthday, he was just going to pack in as big a set list as he could.
He gave us the backstory on that "Marry Me," and how that one sort of came to be. And what was your favorite song from the set? I think I know the answer to this, but
gotta be Uncle Frank. Got to be Uncle Frank. Yeah. I was thrilled to get that one. That's definitely one of my all-time faves and his group of outstanding songs. So yeah, that was phenomenal. And really, it's probably fitting that he squeezed in that extra big set list for you, because the chatter time was there was before and after chatter time, which of course you don't get when you drop a few bucks to get a ticket to go see him play at a big venue.
Uncle Frank couldn't read or write, by the way. No. I would have thought Cottonseed for you, though. I mean, you love you some Cottonseed.
Yeah, it's way up there. That's way up there. Yep. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. That's all right. That's a tough. I don't want to suggest Uncle Frank was an easy call, but it was the call. Yeah, Cottonseed's tremendous. You don't get it much better than that.
Yeah, Cottonseed. If you haven't heard that one. It's the perspective from the State Line gang in relation to that Buford Pusser, Walking Tall, if you might recall from the film many years ago. Chase Goodbread of NFL.com joining us here on Southern Fried Sports, presented by Carty and Lloyd Attorneys at Law and Mercedes-Benz of Tuscaloosa. All right, Chase, I've talked about it throughout the show. I've told our listeners, if they haven't read it already, your long-form piece here in the last few days that was dropped by NFL.com on Quinnen Williams, a fascinating story involving some tragedy and also outlining, how this guy is wired and how he's sort of taken those next steps to become arguably the very best defensive lineman in all of college football. What was maybe a thing or two about Quinnen going into this that you learned that maybe you didn't know as much about beforehand?
Well, one thing that surprised me for sure is that I was told ahead of time by a couple people, as a matter of fact, he just wasn't going to go there. He wasn't going to talk about his mother much, who passed when he was just 12 years old of cancer. She was 38. And so, my expectations going in, and obviously that's what the story was about. And so, you could build that kind of story in a good way if you talk to the family and kind of work it from the edges. And I was kind of thinking maybe I'd have to work Quinnen into the story, obviously, from a different angle. And he opened up about it, which, to my surprise, which kind of, obviously helped the story a great deal, but kind of took me by surprise based on what I'd previously been led to believe. I know he publicly, I shouldn't say publicly, but he declined the chance to talk about it with some other outlets for sure.
It's interesting with Quinnen in terms of his backstory, because I'm not sure a lot of people realize he's got a couple of other brothers, one older, one younger, right, that have played football, and they all seem to have followed different paths, I guess, with academics sort of being at the forefront of that.
Yeah, the older brother actually had an outstanding career at Murray State as a kind of a linebacker safety type. Quincy Jr. is the older one, and he's 2 years older than Quinnen, and so when their mom passed, he was heading into the 9th grade. So just a terrible time for anybody at any time, obviously. But from the standpoint of trying to build an academic record to qualify to play college football, couldn't have happened at a worse time for the older one. and he struggled academically and obviously was distracted for obvious reasons for a couple of years, and kind of had to pull his grades out of the fire his senior year to get qualified and get on to Murray State, where he's been outstanding. He was second in the entire FCS this year in solo tackles, I think 78 of them. So heck of a player in his own right, and so is Giovanni, the younger one.
Let's talk about kind of where Quinnen's positioned himself with this incredible year in which he's had 18 tackles for loss through 13 games. How is he being perceived by NFL people with the potential to come out for this 2019 NFL draft? Is he viewed as a potential Aaron Donald? One of those type of guys? Is he done enough, I guess, in a very short period of time to sort of solidify himself in the eyes of the evaluators at the next level?
Aaron Donald's definitely what they're going to want. That's what they're looking for. That's what they're trying to identify when they look at Ed Oliver and Quinnen Williams and Rashawn Gary and Christian Wilkins and Dexter Lawrence and the whole like. Aaron Donald is your model. I mean, he just signed a contract, a bank breaker for about 30 plus million. I think close to 90 million guaranteed, set a record for defensive players. So, yeah, game changer to get the guy that can get to the quarterback from the inside. And that's what Quinnen Williams proved he could do in his first year as a starter. And that is what's driven his explosive rise among NFL scouts. It's not that he's a great run defender, which he is, because a lot of defensive tackles can stop the run, but to be able to get to the quarterback consistently the way he has and finish, that's something that you just don't see. And when you do it at a high level at a place like Alabama against the toughest of competition, well, that's a recipe for somebody's profile as a draft prospect going from 0 to 60 in half a second. That's exactly why he's been able to do that in his redshirt sophomore year, first year as a full-time starter.
Talking with Chase Goodbread of NFL.com. You can also hear Chase and myself on the Talkin Tide podcast at podbean.com, iTunes, Stitcher, so many different outlets. Check that out as well. We've got a fresh one dropping today, as a matter of fact, previewing this Alabama-Oklahoma matchup on Saturday night down at Hard Rock Stadium. Speaking of Quinnen Williams, topic I've been touching on during the program today, Chase, and I'd like to get your thoughts on it. Most important Alabama defensive player in this game against the nation's top-rated scoring offense in Oklahoma. Who do you got, Chase, from the Alabama side of things?
Yeah, I think Patrick Surtain Jr. I think can be identified as that guy. You could point in several different directions, of course, but I think we're going to see him get tested a little bit. He's the freshman. I know he's got a full season of starting experience under his belt, so I guess technically he's only technically still a freshman. He's got a lot of action under his belt. But I think Oklahoma's going to test him nevertheless. You got to, because your playmakers are out there, and they got excellent running backs too, which we touched on this morning's podcast. But I'll give you Surtain among several guys that could probably fit the bill.
And that leads us into the status of Marquise Hollywood Brown for OU. The Oklahoma camp's been pretty vague, I guess you could say, in sort of describing the playmaker's status. How much of an impact, in your opinion, does it have on OU on that side of the ball if Brown is either limited or really not able to go much at all in this game?
Even if he's limited, it definitely impacts the offense in a pretty big way. I mean, this guy's had a huge season. They've got a couple of receivers that have had huge years, but it's a problem for Oklahoma if he's run around there with a little bit of a gimp and can't blow by people. He's a vertical guy. He's the D.D. Westbrook in that offense. So they need him to be able to run by people. So that impacts it for sure. That being said, I tend to think he's going to be fine just from, what you see and how he's looked, obviously, in the little media viewing. Sometimes you can get enough of a glimpse to at least get a handle on if the guy's close or not. That's one of the few things that can be valuable in those brief media practice viewings. But on top of that, I think with all the rehab time you're talking about, state of the art technology to get there, plus it's a wide receiver who's not bearing a ton of weight on that ankle anyway. I think Marquise Hollywood Brown's going to be just fine.
Yeah, Brown is kind of OU's Calvin Ridley to CeeDee Lamb's Ardarius Stewart, if you're looking for a duo comparison that's closer to home from the last few years. He's definitely the take the top off the defense guy, although CeeDee Lamb, not bad in his own right, averaging over 18 yards per catch. Now, an area where Chase and I sort of differ on this game is the approach that Alabama might take offensively, at least early in the game. Now, Chase, if you listen to the podcast today, you'll learn he's more team Prius, where I'm more team pedal to the metal from the outset. What about it, Goodbread?
Yeah, I'm not going to be surprised to see Alabama establish run early for the first drive, the first couple of drives, and maybe stick with it longer than people think. Now, certainly, Tagovailoa is gonna take his shots, and Nick Saban. This offense is going to get the ball to Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs and Waddle. That's going to happen. I just don't know if they come out winging it left and right from the start. I think it's probably smarter, and frankly, what I expect to see is for Alabama to establish with its line, get some push, and have Damian Harris and Josh Jacobs kind of rip through that OU defense right up front initially. Which of course, maybe you force them to creep up a little bit when they don't want to, and then that just sets things up for Tua. Yeah,
Goodbread thinks they're going to be the equivalent of Hickory High, back in Hoosiers. 4 passes before any shot, I think they're going to be more Stacey Augmon and Larry Johnson, 90, 91, maybe UNLV. It's going to be fascinating to see how Alabama goes about that because, as we've talked about, the layups, Goodbread, it's hard to turn down those layups. But
I think they can get those chunk plays on offense without throwing the ball.
Okay, and I agree. I do think from that standpoint, I don't think achieving balance should be all that difficult for Alabama, and I do think there will be certainly a place for the run game, no doubt about it. Hey, Chase, looking at this quarterback situation for the 2019 NFL Draft, Dwayne Haskins of Ohio State, I would guess, and who else at this point?
Yeah, it's definitely, and you saw Justin Herbert, the kid from Oregon, decided that he's going to come back to school, so that thins the pool a little bit more. A lot can happen. You never know when lightning will strike with a small school guy sometimes. But definitely not. Maybe not headed toward the run that we've seen the last couple of years. You look back at the last couple of years, first round quarterbacks, and you're talking about the young. You're talking about a lot of hits and not very many misses with a lot of those guys. When you start talking about Mahomes and Deshaun Watson and Goff and Wentz, it's been the right time to strike lately, hasn't it?
Yeah, Jared Stidham. That decision looking better and better, isn't it? The Auburn quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, how high does he have the potential to climb? When I look at Jared Stidham, I think of a ceiling of, say, a Kirk Cousins. What do you think? Maybe he could be that kind of guy down the road? A ceiling now. I'm talking about ceiling.
Right. Put him on a team that's already got all the working parts. Yeah, I think this Cousins probably is the ceiling there. He's an NFL quarterback, but how are they gonna? I don't think he's a first rounder.
Pretty big game for Jared Stidham tomorrow. Is that overrated? That narrative that look with what the situation is at quarterback in this upcoming draft, how big a game is the Music City Bowl tomorrow for Jared Stidham against Purdue in the draft process?
It can hurt him more than it can help him, right? I mean, if he goes out there and throws 3 picks, it's more. If he goes out there and throws 3 picks, it's a lot more memorable to scouts than if he throws 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, that lasting impression.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. But by and large, for the most part, I think a lot of hay will be in the barn with him evaluation wise, and Stidham's He's quality quarterback for sure. But yeah, for this one particular game, I think I think it's more memorable for Scouts if he doesn't play well for sure.
With all of this that we're talking about at the quarterback position, any thought should be given to possibly coming out this year by Jalen Hurts? Jalen Hurts is NFL draft eligible. He's got a spot at the Senior Bowl if he comes out. They're holding a spot for Jalen Hurts at the Senior Bowl. Any thought to that if you're in that Hurts camp right now?
If I'm if I'm in the middle of the brain trust there and it's my call, I'm going back to college for another year.
Yeah.
But you never know. I mean, if he did come out, you could make a sensible argument for it, certainly. If nothing else, from the standpoint that, look, I've been on the field enough and played enough and shown enough that scouts can see what I got. They can see who I am, and they can, they've got enough to evaluate. But I don't think that's the smart call, at least not to me, and I don't ultimately think that's what the call will be. But it doesn't mean it's not being kicked around, I guess.
Jalen Hurts just 20 years and 5 months old right now. It's amazing, right? When you think about all the football this guy has played on the biggest of stages in college football, he's not even 20 and a half. So yeah, in terms of reasonable expectation going back to school, regardless of where that school is, would seem to make the most sense for Jalen Hurts. Well, Chase, as always, appreciate you joining us here on the program. Be sure to check out that podcast, Talkin Tide, at podbean.com with Chase and myself. Also, you can see Chase on Crimson Cover weekly on Friday nights, 6:30, WVUA, Channel 23. That's where you're going to check out Mike Parker, Chase Goodbread, former Alabama All-American John Copeland. Thanks a lot, Chase.
Uncle Frank going out of the show today, right? We're going to get that one?
Yeah, we'll get on young Josh Smith to get Uncle Frank to take us out. Yeah.
All right, man.
We'll do that for sure. All right, my man.